Take a look at a map of Europe from before 2022. What you're looking at isn't just a collection of nations, you're seeing a map of energy and capital. For 50 years, that map was defined by a simple, powerful current, cheap Russian gas flowing from east to west. It powered German industry, heated Italian homes, and filled the Kremlin's coffers. It was a flow of wealth that defined an entire era of European geopolitics, creating a web of dependencies many believed was unbreakable. Now, that map is being torn up. Not gradually, not over decades, but in a violent, structural upheaval. The war in Ukraine has done more than redraw battle lines, it has triggered a total and permanent economic divorce. An energy iron curtain is descending across the continent. This isn't just a story about a war. This is the story of Europe's structural rebirth. It's the story of a permanent new wealth map being drawn not in ink, but in pipelines, LNG terminals, and defense budgets. The total pivot away from Russian energy and the sudden embrace of a war economy are creating a new continental reality, fundamentally deciding Europe's winners and losers for the next century. What we're witnessing is not a temporary crisis, but a permanent rewiring of the entire European project. And the consequences are only now beginning to become clear. The old European order was built on a foundation of Russian gas. In 2021, a staggering 45% of the EU's gas imports came from Russia. It was a devil's bargain, struck in the name of economic efficiency. Pipelines like the Yamal Europe and, most notoriously, the Nord Stream duo, were more than just infrastructure. They were geopolitical arteries, pumping lifeblood into the European economy while making it hostage to Moscow. Nord Stream 1, and its never-certified successor, Nord Stream 2, were designed to bypass traditional transit countries like Ukraine, hooking Germany directly into Russia's vast gas fields. For years, this east-to-west flow generated immense wealth, fueling Germany's export-driven manufacturing powerhouse. The system worked, until it didn't. The sabotage of both Nord Stream pipelines in September 2022 was the explosive punctuation mark on an era that was already dead. By then, Russia had already weaponized its energy supplies, and the pipelines, once symbols of controversial cooperation, became monuments to a failed strategy. The response from Brussels has been a legislative blitzkrieg, a systematic dismantling of this decades-old dependency. The centerpiece of this revolution is Regulation, EU, 2026-261. Adopted on January 26, 2026, and entering into force just days later on February 3, this regulation transforms the political goals of the 2022 REPowerEU plan into hard law. It is, for all intents and purposes, a declaration of permanent energy independence from Russia. The regulation establishes a clear, step-by-step prohibition on all imports of natural gas from Russia, covering both pipeline gas and the liquefied natural gas, LNG, that had continued to flow into some European ports. The timeline is aggressive and designed to be irreversible. The law immediately prohibited the signing of any new gas import contracts after June 17, 2025. It then sets a series of deadlines for winding down existing agreements. Short-term contracts for Russian LNG are banned as of April 25, 2026. Short-term pipeline gas contracts follow, banned from June 17, 2026. The long-term contracts, the bedrock of the old system, are given a firm runway to termination. Long-term LNG deals must end by January 1, 2027, a date aligned with the EU's 19th sanctions package. Finally, the last vestiges of the old network, long-term pipeline gas contracts, will be severed by September 30, 2027. To ensure this isn't just a symbolic gesture, the regulation is armed with formidable enforcement. It establishes a prior authorization regime, effective from February 18, 2026, requiring importers to get approval for any transitional volumes. The goal is to prevent circumvention, whether through mixed LNG cargoes or routing via third countries. The penalties for non-compliance are severe, designed to make any violation economically catastrophic. Fines of up to 3.5% of a company's global turnover, with a minimum penalty of €40 million for firms and €2.5 million for individuals. This legal framework isn't just a sanction, it's an act of structural re-engineering. The old east-to-west flow of wealth is dead. In its place, a new west-to-east system is rapidly emerging. This new map is defined by a massive build-out of LNG import infrastructure on Europe's western coasts, in Germany, the Netherlands, and France, designed to receive shipments from new strategic partners like the United States and Qatar, alongside increased pipeline flows from neighbors like Norway. Billions of euros that once flowed to Gazprom are now being redirected to Western energy majors and the construction companies building this new infrastructure. By March 1, 2026, every EU member state was required to submit a national diversification plan, a blueprint for how they will adapt and permanently erase Russian gas from their energy mix. An economic iron curtain, built of regulations and reinforced with steel and concrete, is descending. Parallel to the energy divorce, a second, equally profound transformation is underway: the shift to a permanent war economy. For decades, European defense spending was a story of managed decline. The 2014 invasion of Crimea and the subsequent NATO commitment for members to spend 2% of their GDP on defense was a wake-up call, but for many, it remained a distant target. Russia's full-scale invasion in 2022 shattered that complacency forever. That 2% figure is no longer an aspirational guideline, it's now treated as an absolute floor, a bare minimum for national survival. By 2025, a majority of NATO allies were meeting or exceeding the 2% target, a dramatic reversal from just a few years prior. Poland has emerged as a frontrunner, dedicating a stunning 4.1% of its GDP to defense. The Baltic states are not far behind, with Estonia at 3.4% and Latvia at 3.2%. Even Europe's largest economies have made a historic pivot. Germany, long a laggard, is now hitting the 2.1% mark, a seismic shift in its post-World War II posture. This surge represents hundreds of billions of euros redirected from the civilian economy into the coffers of the defense industry. This isn't a temporary surge to arm Ukraine. It's the foundation of a new European military-industrial complex. We see this in programs like the Act in Support of Ammunition Production, or ASAP. This regulation came into force in mid-2023, allocating €500 million from the EU budget to co-finance projects aimed at dramatically ramping up the production of ammunition and missiles. The goal isn't just to replenish stocks depleted by aid to Kyiv, but to create a sustainable industrial base capable of supporting a high-intensity conflict. Under ASAP, the EU has set a target of producing 2 million artillery shells per year by the end of 2025. This funding is already flowing. In March 2024, the European Commission selected 31 projects, focusing on critical bottlenecks like the production of powder and explosives. Companies in Germany, France, Poland, and Scandinavia are receiving grants to expand factory lines and modernize equipment. The financial architecture of Europe is also being repurposed. The European Investment Bank, EIB, traditionally known as the EU's climate bank, is undergoing a significant identity shift. The EIB has dramatically expanded its definition of eligible dual-use projects, with its security and defense funding quadrupling to over €4 billion in 2025, representing nearly 5% of its financing within the EU. By 2026, that figure is planned to hit €4.5 billion. This pivot signals that defense is no longer a niche sector but a core strategic priority for the Union, on par with the green transition. Every euro spent on a tank is a euro not spent on other priorities. Europe is consciously choosing to prioritize hard power and deterrence, creating a war economy that will restructure its financial flows and industrial priorities for a generation. The wealth map is being redrawn to favor nations with robust defense industries and the strategic depth to host them. What we're discussing here are immense, structural changes. To really grasp how these pieces fit together, the energy shift, the military buildup, the new geography of power, it helps to have a clear framework. That's why we at Caspian Report have developed our own analytical models and seminars. If you're interested in a deeper, more systematic understanding of these geopolitical shifts, I recommend you check out the link in the description. Our seminars are designed to give you the tools to see the world not just as it is, but as it's becoming. These two tectonic shifts, in energy and defense, are creating a new geography of power in Europe. This map is divided into two conceptual zones, the Fortress Belt and the Grey Zone. The Fortress Belt is the primary beneficiary of this new reality. This zone stretches from the Nordic countries, down through Poland and the Baltic states, and is anchored in the west by a rearming Germany. These are the nations most aggressively decoupling their economies from Russia and are at the forefront of the military buildup. They are transforming into the strategic and economic bastions of the new Europe. Poland is the archetype of a Fortress Belt nation. Its massive defense spending is turning it into a regional military heavyweight. Simultaneously, its decisive pivot to non-Russian energy, particularly through its commitment to new nuclear power plants and LNG imports, is making it a hub for energy security. This combination acts as a powerful magnet for capital. An international firm looking to invest in Europe sees a factory in a country with a powerful army and a secure energy grid as a much safer bet. This creates a strategic premium for countries like Poland, attracting investment and accelerating its economic convergence with Western Europe. The Nordic countries are another core component. Finland and Sweden's entry into NATO has solidified the security of the entire Baltic Sea region. Finland's Olkiluoto 3 nuclear reactor, which came online in 2023, is a prime example of building sovereign resilience. It provides a massive 1,600 megawatts of stable power, single-handedly covering about 14% of the country's electricity demand. This energy independence, combined with a high-tech economy and a formidable military, makes the region a highly attractive destination for investment. In stark contrast is the gray zone. This includes countries that, either by geography or policy, remain more exposed to Russian influence and instability. They may have been slower to diversify their energy supplies or have less robust military capabilities. For these countries, the new European reality presents a significant challenge. The perception of higher risk, whether from energy cutoffs or political instability, acts as a powerful deterrent to investment. Capital is cautious, flees uncertainty and flows to security. As a result, nations in the gray zone risk economic stagnation and a widening gap with the fortified core of the continent. The new wealth map of Europe is therefore being drawn along these lines of security. Infrastructure projects are a leading indicator. Investment is no longer just about market access or labor costs, it's about strategic alignment. Projects that enhance the resilience of the Fortress Belt, like the Rail Baltica high-speed rail line, will attract significant funding because they are seen as strategic necessities. Conversely, projects in the gray zone may struggle to secure financing. The war is thus creating a self-reinforcing cycle. Security attracts investment, which builds economic strength, which in turn funds greater security. Long-term viability of the Fortress Belt rests on what can be called sovereign wealth, the physical reality of energy independence. In a world where energy can be weaponized, the ability to generate stable, domestic power is the ultimate strategic asset. This is why, after years of stagnation following the Fukushima disaster, nuclear power is experiencing a major renaissance across the Fortress Belt. Poland is at the epicenter of this nuclear revival. To break its historical dependence on Russian fossil fuels, Warsaw is making a multi-billion euro bet on nuclear. The government has selected American Westinghouse AP1000 reactor technology for its first plant on the Baltic coast. In September 2023, key engineering contracts were signed with the consortium of Westinghouse and the construction giant Bechtel. The goal is to bring the first reactor into commercial operation by 2033, providing a huge source of clean, reliable power completely insulated from geopolitical pressure. Finland's experience with Olkiluoto 3 serves as a powerful case study. The plant, Europe's largest single reactor, immediately demonstrated its strategic value. By providing a steady supply of electricity, it stabilized the grid and enhanced Finland's energy self-sufficiency at the critical moment it cut ties with Russia. It stands as a testament to the idea that large-scale nuclear projects deliver unparalleled energy security. Sweden, once a leader in the anti-nuclear movement, has performed a complete U-turn. After a 1980 referendum to phase out nuclear power, the government has reversed course. In June 2023, the Swedish parliament changed the country's energy target from 100% renewable to 100% fossil-free, a subtle but hugely significant change designed to create the conditions for a new nuclear build-out. The government then followed up with a concrete roadmap, plans to construct at least 2 new large-scale reactors by 2035 and a total of 10 new reactors by 2045. For Sweden, as for Poland and Finland, nuclear power is now viewed as an indispensable tool for guaranteeing a stable, sovereign power supply, the very bedrock of a modern, secure state. For half a century, Europe's destiny was tethered to the pipeline snaking west from Siberia. That era is over. The war in Ukraine has acted as a brutal but decisive catalyst, forcing a structural reinvention of the continent at a speed once thought impossible. What has emerged, and is now being cemented in law and infrastructure, is a new Europe, bifurcated and fundamentally rewired. The story is one of 2 colossal shifts happening in parallel. The first is the Great Energy Divorce, the final termination of Europe's dependence on Russian gas. This move is reversing the continent's energy flows from the historical east-west axis to a new west-east orientation powered by LNG, renewables, and a resurgent nuclear industry. This redirection of energy is also a redirection of wealth, starving Moscow of revenue and channeling that capital into building a resilient, sovereign European grid. The second shift is the rise of a European war economy. The NATO 2% defense spending target is no longer an aspiration but a floor, triggering a massive reallocation of national budgets toward the military. Programs like ASAP and the pivot of the European Investment Bank are forging a permanent European military-industrial base, capable of ensuring the continent's security in a more dangerous world. Together, these forces are drawing a new map of power and prosperity. This map is defined by a fortress belt of secure, well-armed, and energy-independent nations that are becoming the new centers of gravity for investment. And it is defined by a more vulnerable gray zone, where proximity to risk threatens to create a cycle of capital flight and stagnation. The ultimate legacy of this conflict will be measured by the power plants built in Poland, the ammunition factories expanded in Germany, and the LNG terminals constructed along the Atlantic coast. It will be seen in the balance sheets of defense contractors and the investment decisions of global corporations. A new Europe is being born from the crucible of this war, a Europe that is more militarized, more inwardly focused, and defined by a hard-nosed pursuit of strategic autonomy. The new wealth map being etched today will define the lives of Europeans for the next 100 years.